I like Ray in the UK. Is there a problem with the phrase extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence? Ray, welcome to the show.
Ooh.
Hi.
Hello. What is your question/comment?
It's actually quite related to what you just talked about, in the sense that in the same way that Occam's razor is misunderstood and misapplied, often by people who identify with the modern skeptic community as well as other people, I feel like even more so with this particular phrase, I feel like I haven't quite fully worked this out yet, hoping you can kind of help me develop and refine my idea here and see if there's anything wrong with it, because I'm struggling to really explain it for myself, but I feel like I'm onto something where it seems to me that whenever people throughout history have considered themselves skeptics and yet been horribly wrong, it's come down to this, not the phrase, not the exact phrase, they probably weren't consciously thinking it, but the underlying intuitive idea we have, like the underlying intuition that underlies that phrase. I feel like that's actually wrong, or at the very least it's like people haven't analysed what extraordinary means, which means what do you mean by ordinary, and how are you determining when you're looking at a claim if it's ordinary or not? Because throughout history it seems like people have identified an explanation for something as that can't be true because it's extraordinary, and what they mean is it feels weird to me.
Yeah.
They're just describing a feeling about it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good analysis of how people have kind of adopted that term. And that's always the danger with adopting just a term. It's as close to cherry picking as atheists get, I think, is just taking random Hitch quotes and being like, this is just something I say now to everything. It does become a thought-stopping device, right? It can, like, oh, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Unless I'm blown away by the quality of your evidence in the moment that you present it to me, I can dismiss this and feel like I'm still a skeptic about it. And that's not how that's supposed to be used.
No.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think extraordinary in this case, or at least how I use it, because I don't know the context in which this quote first came about. Extraordinary just means, hey, if you are going to present me with something that defies what my understanding of the world is and requires me to shift my perspective in some fundamental way about the world, you're going to need to convince me to do that, right? It's just hey, I'm just not going to adopt the fact that, you know, the earth is flat. Like, that will require me to do a lot of shifting and changing internally. So yes, absolutely. Even if there are things that are true that fundamentally change the way you view reality, you should still have that requirement that you must be convinced of it. But to me, that's all that means. Like, hey, okay, you're presenting me with something that will change the way I live my life.
Mm-hmm.
I need solid evidence that this is the case before I change my life.
So it's really about stakes, which is broader than that. You could say stakes that have high, claims that have high stakes, if you're wrong about them, require good evidence before we act upon them. Because, for example, like how doctors made a horrible mistake for decades. They were operating on babies without anesthetic. They just paralyzed them because they misjudged the evidence that said babies feel no pain yet.
Yeah.
And when you look at the history of that, it's frightening. That only stopped happening like the year before I was born. Like, I'm 33. The year before I was born, babies were just being vivisected, and they now know that they died more often because they went into shock. They were being tortured, and they just were tortured to death. And that happened.
Holy crap!
And that's a whole medicine that came from this side, that came from I don't know, just not judging evidence well, and then. I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry, I got a bit lost. But
no, that's holy shit.
Yeah, I think you're exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a good.
No one wants to talk about that because they want you to trust your doctor, even though history kind of suggests you look into things yourself. yeah, like go with your doctor. But when there's a really again, it's a high stakes thing I was talking about.
Yeah,
there are high stakes there. So because the stakes were so high, they should have required proof before they said babies feel no pain. It's not that it was extraordinary. There's nothing extraordinary or paradigm changing about whether the nervous system of a baby is developed or not. That wasn't extraordinary or ordinary. It was within the realms of ordinary, but it should have required higher evidence, because what they were going to do, which was, we think anesthetic is dangerous, which it is to a small baby, therefore we think it's better to not give them anesthetic. That was a really high stakes claim, which should have, and even if it wasn't ordinary. So it's not actually about how extraordinary something is, it's just about how high the stakes are, and that applies to ordinary things as well.
Ordinary in the term of like natural versus supernatural. And extraordinary does not mean supernatural.
Actually, I kind of want to push back a little bit. I kind of want to push back a little bit, because when it comes to supernatural, that's really how I interacted with the claim. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I think that it would be better stated, supernatural claims require supernatural evidence.
Oh, you took this in a completely different direction.
That word. I think that comes down to what I was trying to say is, when you say something supernatural, as far as I can tell, people usually just mean, I can't explain the science behind that idea, therefore it makes me feel weird. It feels spooky. Spooky's the best word for it. And so because of that idea, I reject that, because that emotion is not a good way to determine what's actually true in reality, because reality doesn't care if you...
You're right, but you can still go deeper. Because it's not just somebody who says I was feeling spooked out. Like, I get that, if somebody got scared, you can go deeper. If somebody says ghosts exist, bring me a ghost. If somebody says a God exists and they can show evidence, bring me the God detector. If somebody says, there's a poltergeist in my house, let's go to your house, show me and tell me how poltergeists are supposed to work. Let me interact with this, and then we can go from there. But if you don't have the evidence of the supernatural, then using the supernatural as a cause for anything is a bridge too far. Once you can get to that point, once you can investigate the supernatural, then we can talk. But until then, it doesn't even get to go on the table of possible explanations, and I think that's what drives me nuts.
I disagree.
Really?
Because I think the problem I have with that is, how do you made the decision before the point of before you put it on the table that this is in this category you're calling supernatural. But what do you even mean? How have you determined that, for example, if in some way I don't know, say for example with ghosts, I don't particularly believe in ghosts, I've not been convinced of them, but I'm open to them. And the reason I'm open to the idea is because I understand there's science that I don't think we know everything about science. There could be some science we just haven't discovered yet.
Okay, but
and therefore I'm open to that. I'm open to the idea that there is an external cause. It's not in people's imaginations.
But it doesn't.
I don't know what that is.
Well, so here's the thing. You just perfectly exemplified that. We don't know, therefore anything can go on the table, and I think that's absolutely wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong. If somebody broke into your house and stole a cookie from your cookie jar, what we're going to do is we're going to list all of the reasons why that cookie jar, that cookie could be missing from the cookie jar. We can, look for evidence. We could see if there's camera footage. We can dust for fingerprints. We can, check to see if the door was locked. We can list out all of the people. All of those things are really, really good ways to, find out what goes on the table, what could be the possible explanation. But if I were to say, oh yes, so we're going to list Ray's neighbors, Ray's family, friends, and the fact that they might sleepwalk, or there's some really clever, raccoon, that's breaking into your house, whatever the case is, if I said, ooh, and also there's life after death, that life sticks around and really likes cookies, is in your house and stole the cookie from the cookie jar, that should go on the table too, along with your neighbors and your friends and your family and all of that stuff. I would say no, that does not get to go on the possible list of things. I would say saying I don't know, if you cut everything out, the solution at the end of it should be I don't know, not well we're left with ghosts, so it could be ghosts. No, say I don't know, it needs to be investigated. But when you put ghosts on the table. When you put the supernatural on the table, you're implicitly giving it a lot more credibility than it deserves.
Okay, so can we have another example? Because I feel like there's issues with that ghost example, but an example I have been using as an analogy is
Sure.
Here's like the thing is, like, again, what makes it supernatural? I haven't really defined what that even means when you say this explanation, because I'm not talking about proof. I'm saying at the point at which something's a mystery, we have not got proof about what it is. So I haven't got proof about where the cookie went, and say that at the moment there's no way to prove it. What you can do, though, is take all you can speculate, take the possibilities that you can think of and rank them. And I think the question I'm getting at is, how do we rank the possibilities in terms of likelihood when we are admitting that we don't know for sure, and we don't know yet, and maybe we'll never know, but we can still rank them in terms of, okay, what out of the things we can possibly speculate, how do we rank those things? That's where I see a problem in terms of sometimes that, for example, I saw there's a video about the I don't remember which incident it was. It was one of the Navy UFO incidents that was being studied by the US government, and this video was criticizing how the Navy has interpreted it, and saying, the people in the Navy have come out and said, I think it's most likely, it would seem, it's non-human technology. That seems to be one of the more, not that it's proven, but that's one of the more likely things. And the response from one video was, what you're saying is it's extraordinary until proven otherwise. And my issue with that is, what makes it extraordinary? I see, like, it's not supernatural. If it is, then we're supernatural for existing and having technology. It's not.
I think you're losing the baby with the bathwater on that, Ray. You're losing the point if you make that concession. So if somebody says there's non-human technology that's responsible for something, then I think before it gets on the table, you need to show that there's non-human technology. Otherwise, so here's my piece on this is, I truly think that the unanswered questions are the ones that we as humans strive to investigate. And if we put something on the cork board of humanity saying, what the fuck is this? Then hopefully we can inspire somebody to do the work to try and figure it out. And it's kind of, it makes me think of like a dark matter, right? I think the best thing science has done for dark matter is say, we have no fucking idea what it is, because there are a lot of people who cannot stand that and are working as hard as they can to try and figure it out. But what they didn't do is they didn't put a placeholder in there until then. Right? Dark matter is a misnomer. And anytime you look into it, they say, well, actually, it's a misnomer, but they didn't say that is an alien ship, or it could be an alien ship.
That's the thing. I'm not saying is, I'm saying, how do we rank it and say how likely it is? I think the best way to do it is look at all the other possibilities you've thought of. Think of all the possibilities you've thought of. Be aware that there might be something you haven't thought of. Mm-hmm. So there could always be an explanation you've just not even thought of and can't even conceive of yet.
Sure.
And then apart from that, of the things you can think of, and rank those. For now, that's the best you can do until you prove something.
Sure.
So the way I would rank those things that we have thought of, which includes non-human technology, for example, or whatever other example we can think of, I would rank them by saying, out of these reasons, which one does not have logical reasons that seem to be really against it? So, for example, the idea that it's Russia, that is ridiculous to me, because there's so many reasons against it being possible that in 2004 Russia could do that,
but
and that now they're somehow starting to win a war against Ukraine.
Right.
That makes no sense.
Right. There's a big difference between Russia and non-human technology, though.
I think, though, the can I jump in here real fast? Let me jump in.
It does not make sense to be Russia. There are reasons against it being Russia. There are no scientific or logical reasons against it being non-human technology. There's no logical reasons.
Ray, I've got you. I think that was where I was going to go as well. In this hypothetical ranking, where do we place things that have active evidence against versus no evidence either direction?
Sure. So if you're going to list them, right, you can go, here are all the possibilities I can think of. Mm-hmm. And then you put the box that says something I haven't thought of.
Right.
And if you get rid of all of the stuff that you can think of, and you're left with something I haven't thought of, then you say...
No, I'm not saying something you haven't thought of. You're saying that Russia creating this UFO thing is more likely than non-human technology.
No, I'm saying non-human technology doesn't get to go on the table that way. It goes on the table in the same way that unicorns and fairies go on the table. You can say, we don't know.
I'm going to push back on you.
Why?
I don't think that that's accurate, because that's not following the scientific method.
Really? So what part of the scientific method says if you don't know the answer, then you can come up with one? No.
You're assuming that the response to non-human technology is, therefore that's what it must be. That's not what I don't think Ray is saying, certainly not what I'm saying. I'm saying we thought that lightning was divine at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're like, well, lightning is just one of those supernatural things, we're not even going to bother hypothesizing about that. We're focusing on the stuff we know about. We would never figure out how lightning worked.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is I feel like the direction that Ray is going in, and Ray, you can jump in a minute and let me know if I'm accurate here, is we need to consider that maybe lightning is something that we don't know, but maybe not supernatural, before we can figure out that lightning is in fact a natural phenomenon. And I think you would agree with that, but I think you are assuming the next step, which is someone assuming that, well, lightning is possibly supernatural, therefore that's what it is, therefore I'm not going to look into it any further. And I think that that's not quite what is being on the table here.
I think that you're making an assumption about my statement as well, but I want to give Ray the chance to retort. Ray, did V summarize what you were trying to say?
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking of it. Is I'm not saying that we should. I feel like part of the problem is that when someone proposes a possibility that someone else sees as, for whatever reason, they feel like it would be weird, they call it supernatural or extraordinary, and then assume that you are claiming that's definitely the answer. And that's not the case. I'm just literally working out, how do we rank, when we're thinking of the things we can conceive of as an explanation for something, what is the best way to rank them? And I feel like a lot of the reason that, say, like the people who used to doubt evolution when it was first proposed thought they were being skeptical, because the idea at first, out of context of all the other evidence, when you just first heard it for the first time, it would have sounded extraordinary. It would have sounded almost like magic.
Absolutely.
And
so
you would have called it. It would have felt like some kind of mystical.
Got it. I think you might be conflating what I'm saying with the idea that I'm trying to stifle investigation. And the fact is, if that's what I've communicated, then I need to try and communicate better, because what I'm trying to say is, I think that you are going to empower investigation when you leave it as, I don't know. Instead, I think that the implication there that, well, let's just not investigate it because it doesn't fit within our paradigm. I'm coming at it the other way of, let's not investigate it because it must be supernatural. We're talking past each other, I think. And the point I'm trying to say is, if we're listing possibilities for the cause of a thing, then if we want something to go in the list of possibilities, then it needs to leave the I don't know box. And I highly encourage everyone to look into the I don't know box, find something you want to investigate and investigate it. But until we can get to know something in the I don't know box doesn't get to be part of the list of possible solutions. I feel like we're better going to be able to filter out.
I get that ghosts and vampires and fairies with magic wands, I get those, but I don't get why people put non-human intelligence in that box. Like those, I don't see how, apart from conditioning, social conditioning, being taught that these all belong in the same category, when really, if they belong in that category, then so do we. We're a species that evolved on a planet and have technology and have now left that planet. Without it, why is that spooky? Are we spooky and weird and supernatural?
No.
So then non-human intelligence shouldn't be either. It's just another species like us.
Absolutely.
Biology,
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. So what evidence, I agree with you. I think the universe is way too big for us to be alone. I really do.
And too old.
Now, now that said, the incredibly unlikely chance that an alien race, right, a non-human race, somehow made it to Earth and their technology is here, it is insanely unlikely. And because of that, I would have to say, hey, I'm not going to use that as a list of a possible cause for a thing until we can, investigate that further, right? It's not a supernatural claim. It's an extraordinary claim. It didn't spook me out that I couldn't understand what the unidentified flying object is. And I'm not trying to dismiss it that it didn't happen. What I'm trying to say is point at that, say, I don't know, and stop trying to come up with, fantastical solutions when the question, the statement, I don't know, can empower somebody, can encourage somebody to investigate. Like, I really don't think that, the example you gave, yeah, you're right. It's not supernatural, but it is extraordinary.
And we'll come back to the...
No, I have to go back another time to talk about that then, because honestly, that's where I disagree. I don't think extraterrestrial life or other it doesn't have to be extraterrestrial.
I didn't say that, Ray. Ray, I didn't say that.
Into extraordinary.
I didn't say that.
I think we're going to wrap up this call. It's gone on a little bit long.
It has.
Ray, thank you for calling in. And I like that, like, you got the three of us kind of like all having our own thoughts about this and probably disagreeing on a bunch of stuff. We're going to keep talking about this for sure. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Was I saying that?
The way that it sounded to me was that given a situation, I think there was a problem conflating extraordinary and supernatural. I think that I agree with both of you, because I think I see where both of you were coming from, and you were both making an uncharitable claim assumption about the other person's opinion. So I think Ray was assuming that you were saying it shouldn't even be considered as a possibility, and we should never look into it, and we should just dismiss it outright. And I think you were assuming that Ray was suggesting that it held as much weight as other things and should be considered a viable option. And I don't think that either of those was actually an argument being made here. I think that the argument was, hey, if something seems extraordinary, we should not just throw it out. We should focus on it and see if we can come up with extraordinary evidence, because it would be really cool if we found proof of something extraordinary.
Sure.
I think that was literally that's what I got out of this conversation.
I don't know. I just kind of want to put a pin on it that I don't think that there being, extraterrestrial life at some point somewhere, I think that's more likely than not. I'm not saying that is the extraordinary claim, because I'll agree with you. I think that is not extraordinary. The extraordinary piece is us interacting with it. That's the extraordinary piece. When we point a telescope to a planet that is 1 million light years away, we're seeing a planet 1 million light years ago. And if life would have sprung up and possibly extinguished itself before but from the time that we saw it to getting there, then what are the odds of us being able to communicate with them?
Right. So it's the same thing where, because of the time distortion that happens during viewing things light years away, hypothetically, what happens is an extraterrestrial species will look down and see all of us riding on horseback with powdered wigs and be like, oh, well, they're not nearly as sophisticated yet.
Right.
So there are actual physical reasons why certain assumptions about that are absolutely false, which again, I think Ray was saying when they mentioned it couldn't be Russia, because there is actual physical evidence against that. So that needs to be wrapped into it for sure.
I don't think so. I don't think that the claim of whether or not Russia did it impacts the claim of whether or not aliens
I'm not
did
saying it impacts it. I'm saying it's synonymous. You can have a claim about something that is physical, that could be the case, but has a lot of evidence against it physically. And I think the question Ray was asking was, would a physical claim that had physical evidence against it be higher or lower on the list of things, possible options, than something that we could not prove or disprove with physical evidence?
I think that opens the door to every I think that does more harm than good.
Okay.